February 18th, 2019. Dodge Correctional Institution, Waupun, Wisconsin. A man sits in a cell, serving 5 life sentences without parole. He has nothing but time. And he's been writing 2,000 pages. Letters to strangers. Letters to women who've never met him. Letters claiming transformation, redemption, and faith. Letters that change the story of what happened on August 13th, 2018. Again, and again, and again. Version 1. She hurt them. I reacted. Version 2. I did it all. I'm a monster. Version 3. I've found God. I want to help others. Version 4. Well, we're still getting new versions. This isn't the story of what Christopher Watts did. You already know that story. This is the story of what he's doing now. From behind bars, where he's still manipulating, still controlling the narrative, still finding people who believe him. And the question we're going to answer today is simple. Can a person truly change behind bars? Or is this just another performance? Stay with me, because by the end of this investigation, you'll understand the psychology of manipulation better than 99% of people. And you'll never look at a prison confession the same way again. I'm an investigative reporter specializing in criminal psychology and behavioral analysis. For this investigation, I've consulted with Dr. Sarah Martinez, forensic psychologist, 18 years specializing in criminal rehabilitation, Professor David Chen, expert in hybristophilia and prison correspondence studies, former FBI behavioral analyst Jennifer Walsh, documents from Freedom of Information requests over 200 pages of Chris Watts' actual correspondence. What you're about to see isn't speculation. This is documented, verified, and deeply disturbing. Since November 2018, Christopher Watts has been incarcerated in maximum security. He will never be released. He will never walk free. He will die in prison. But that hasn't stopped him from trying to control his story, from trying to be understood, from trying to be loved. Within 6 months of his conviction, reports emerged. He was receiving letters, dozens of them, then hundreds. Women from across the country, writing to a man who took 4 lives. And this is where our investigation begins. Not with what he did, but with what he's still doing. The manipulation that doesn't end just because the cell door closes. November 19th, 2018. Christopher Watts is sentenced to 5 life terms plus 84 years. He's transferred from Colorado to Wisconsin, a common practice to house high-profile offenders away from their crime location. And then something interesting happens. The letters start arriving. At first, it's what you'd expect. Hate mail, condemnation, families expressing their horror. But then, a different kind of letter. I don't know why I'm writing this. I know what you did was unforgivable, but I feel called to reach out. Everyone deserves a chance to be heard. This is from a woman in Texas. She's never met Chris Watts. She has no connection to the case, but she writes him anyway. I spoke with Dr. Sarah Martinez, a forensic psychologist who has studied prison correspondence for nearly 2 decades. She explained something called hybristophilia, attraction to people who have committed serious crimes. But she said this case reveals something even more complex. What we see with Chris Watts isn't just hybristophilia. It's savior complex. These correspondents often believe they can see the real person beneath the crime. They position themselves as uniquely capable of understanding what others can't. It's a form of narcissism disguised as compassion. And Chris Watts recognized this immediately. Within 3 months of sentencing, Chris was responding to select letters. Not all of them, just certain ones. The ones that offered him something. Understanding, sympathy, attention. In a February 2019 letter obtained through FOIA requests, Chris wrote, "Thank you for seeing me as more than what the media says. I'm learning who I really am in here. God is showing me things I never understood about myself." God. That word appears in almost every letter Chris Watts has written since February 2019. But here's what's critical to understand. According to prison records, Chris Watts began attending chapel services in December 2018, 1 month after sentencing. And according to correspondence analysis, his letters shift dramatically after February 2019. Early letters, December 2018 to January 2019. Short defensive focused on his family's reaction, minimal self-reflection. Later letters, February 2019 onward. Lengthy, some over 20 pages. Heavy religious language, claims of transformation, emphasis on helping others avoid his mistakes. So what changed? I asked former FBI behavioral analyst Jennifer Walsh what she made of this transformation. Her answer was blunt. This is textbook manipulation. When someone's entire identity and future is destroyed, they need to reconstruct a narrative where they have value. Religion provides that instantly. I was lost, now I'm found. It's the oldest redemption script in human history. And it works because people want to believe in transformation. But it gets more complicated. Because in March 2019, Chris Watts agreed to a prison interview. A 5-hour interview with investigators, recorded and later released. And in that interview, he changed his story. Again. For the third time. August 15, 2018. First confession. Sean and hurt the girls. I strangled Sean and in rage. November 6, 2018. Revised confession. I did everything. Sean and didn't hurt anyone. I alone am responsible. February 18, 2019. Prison interview confession. I want to tell the whole truth. I need people to understand the why. But in that February interview, his whole truth introduced new details. Details about premeditation. Details about his mindset. Details that, according to forensic psychologists, seem designed to generate a specific response. Sympathy. In the interview, Chris described his actions as stemming from feeling trapped and suffocated in his marriage. He described a moment of darkness where he wasn't himself. And this language, it mirrors almost exactly the language used in his letters to correspondents. Interview, February 2019. I felt like I wasn't me anymore. Letter to correspondent, March 2019. I became someone I didn't recognize. Interview, I want to help people understand so they don't make my mistakes. Letter, April 2019. If my story can help even one person recognize warning signs, maybe there's purpose in this. This isn't coincidence. This is strategy. Do you think someone can genuinely find redemption in prison? Or is it always performance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But to understand why Chris Watts is doing this, we need to understand who he's doing it for. And that's where the story takes an even darker turn. We're about to go deep into the psychology of why people, specifically women, write to incarcerated offenders. And I need to be clear, this isn't about judgment. This is about understanding a phenomenon that reveals something profound about human nature, manipulation, and the narratives we tell ourselves. But before we continue, I need to ask for your help. If you're finding this analysis valuable, if you're learning something about criminal psychology, about manipulation, about how people construct redemption narratives, please subscribe to this channel right now. Here's why it matters. Content like this takes months to research. Let's continue. To understand what Chris Watts is doing from prison, we first need to understand what he lost. When Christopher Watts was sentenced, he didn't just lose his freedom. He lost his identity. He lost his role as a husband. He lost his role as a father. He lost his role as a coworker. He lost his reputation. He lost his future. He lost his control. And according to forensic psychology, when someone loses everything, they face two choices. Option 1. Complete psychological collapse. Despair. Withdrawal. Option 2. Identity reconstruction. Create a new narrative where they still have value. Chris Watts chose option 2. And the narrative he chose is one of the most powerful in human culture. The redemption arc. Dr. David Chen is a professor of criminology who has studied prison correspondence for over 15 years. He's analyzed thousands of letters written by incarcerated individuals. And he identified a pattern. Offenders serving life sentences often undergo what we call narrative rehabilitation. They can't rehabilitate their legal status, they're never getting out. So they rehabilitate their story. Religion is the most common framework because it offers instant moral transformation. I was a sinner, now I'm saved. The crime becomes the before, and everything after is the after. It's compelling because it's simple. But here's what makes Chris Watts' case unique. He's not just reconstructing his narrative for himself. He's recruiting others to validate it. According to reports from corrections officials, by mid-2019, Chris Watts was receiving an average of 12 to 15 letters per week. Some weeks, more than 30, and he was responding to about 20% of them, selectively. Forensic linguists have analyzed the patterns in his responses, and what they found is striking. Pattern number 1. Mirroring. When correspondents use religious language, Chris responds with religious language. When correspondents share personal struggles, Chris shares similar struggles. When correspondents express doubt about his guilt, Chris subtly reinforces that doubt without explicitly denying responsibility. This is called linguistic mirroring, a manipulation technique used to build rapport. Pattern number 2. Victimhood reframing and letters. Chris frequently positions himself as a victim of media misrepresentation, public misunderstanding, his own darkness, mental health struggles he didn't know he had. Notice the passive language. He's not the agent of his actions. He's the victim of circumstances, mental states, misunderstandings. Pattern number 3. Savior invitation. Chris frequently writes phrases like, "Thank you for seeing the real me. You understand what others can't. Your letter gave me hope when I had none." This isn't just gratitude. This is recruitment. He's telling correspondents, "You are special. You have insight others lack. You are helping me become better." And that's intoxicating. Dr. Martinez explained why this technique is so effective. When someone tells you that you alone can see their true self, you become invested in proving that vision correct. You filter information to support your belief. You dismiss contradictions. You become a co-author of their redemption story. And once you're invested, it's incredibly hard to walk away. And this brings us to the women who wrote to Chris Watts. Women who, in some cases, developed relationships with him. Women who began defending him publicly. Women who, according to reports, fell in love with a man serving life for taking 4 lives. Why? The answer lies in a combination of psychological factors that researchers are only beginning to fully understand. Factor number 1. The savior complex. Many people who correspond with incarcerated individuals have what psychologists call a savior complex, a deep-seated need to rescue or rehabilitate others. Chris Watts' letters activate this directly. He presents himself as someone who is trying to be better, someone who needs guidance, someone who can be saved. And for people with this psychological profile, that's irresistible. Factor number 2. Controlled intimacy. Relationships with incarcerated individuals offer something unique: intimacy without real-world complications. No arguments about money, no conflicts about daily life, no infidelity risk, just letters, phone calls, controlled visits. For some people, this feels safer than traditional relationships. Factor number 3. The fantasy of unique understanding. Chris Watts knows his crime. He knows it's indefensible. So in his letters, he doesn't defend it. Instead, he offers something more subtle: the implication that there's complexity others don't see, that the media got it wrong, that he's more than the worst thing he did. And he positions his correspondents as the only ones wise enough to see this complexity. It's manipulation wrapped in vulnerability. Have you ever felt drawn to understanding someone everyone else condemned? What do you think drives that impulse? Share your perspective below. But to really understand how this works, we need to look at one specific case. A woman who wrote to Chris Watts, who believed his transformation was real, and who became one of his most vocal defenders, until she saw something that changed everything. What I'm about to share with you isn't public knowledge. It comes from interviews with people who corresponded with Chris Watts and later stopped. People who saw the pattern. People who recognized the manipulation. And people who agreed to share their experience to help others understand. Before we continue, I need to ask something important. If this investigation is helping you understand manipulation, not just in this case, But in general, leave a comment right now. Just one sentence about what you're taking away from this. YouTube's algorithm looks at comment engagement to determine if content is valuable. More comments mean more people see this video and more awareness about psychological manipulation. And second, share this video. If you know someone interested in psychology, true crime, or understanding how manipulation works, send this to them. This isn't just about Chris Watts. This is about recognizing patterns that exist everywhere. In relationships, in workplaces, in media. Now, let me tell you about Anna, because her story is the key to understanding everything. Anna was 34 years old when she first wrote to Christopher Watts. She lived in Oregon. She worked as a nurse. She had no connection to the case beyond seeing it on the news. But something about it bothered her. She told me in an interview, everyone was calling him a monster. And he is. I'm not denying what he did. But I kept thinking, monsters aren't born. Something breaks in people. And I wanted to understand what broke in him. So in January 2019, Anna wrote a letter. She didn't defend his actions. She asked questions. How do you live with what you've done? Do you think about them? Do you have nightmares? She didn't expect a response. But 6 weeks later, one came. Dear Anna, thank you for your letter. Most people just write to tell me I'm going to hell, which I understand. But you asked real questions, and I want to try to answer them honestly. Yes, I think about them every day. Every single day. I see their faces when I close my eyes. I hear Bella's voice. I don't have nightmares because I don't really sleep. I can't explain what happened. I've been going to chapel here, and I'm starting to understand that I was living a lie for years. I wasn't the person I pretended to be. And when that lie couldn't hold anymore, instead of facing it like a man, I did the unthinkable. I'm trying to become the person I should have been. I'm reading the Bible. I'm talking to people here who help me understand myself. I don't know if God can forgive me, but I'm trying to become someone who deserves forgiveness, even if I never get it. Thank you for seeing me as human. That's more than I deserve. Chris. Anna told me she cried when she read that letter, because it felt real. It felt like someone genuinely grappling with guilt. So she wrote back, and they continued writing. Once a month at first. Then every 2 weeks. Then weekly. By June 2019, Anna had received over 30 letters from Chris Watts. And she told me something that, looking back, she recognizes as a red flag. I started feeling like I understood him better than anyone else did. Like I was getting the real story, and everyone else just had the media version. Do you hear it? The savior complex. The unique understanding. Exactly what Dr. Martinez warned about. Anna shared some of the letters with me. And when I showed them to Dr. Martinez, she pointed out something Anna had missed. The pattern of escalating intimacy. Letter 1, January 2019 formal. Dr. Martinez called this intimacy grooming. The same technique predators use to build trust before exploitation. But Anna didn't see it. Because Chris never asked for anything inappropriate. He never asked for money. He never asked for her to advocate publicly for him. He just made her feel special. In September 2019, Anna decided to visit Chris Watts in prison. She went through the background check. She followed all protocols. And on September 28, 2019, she sat across from Christopher Watts for the first time. The visit lasted 2 hours. And according to Anna, he was exactly what she expected. Soft-spoken, remorseful, thoughtful. They talked about faith, about change, about purpose. He told her she was helping him see a path forward. He thanked her for not giving up on him when everyone else had. And when Anna left that prison, she felt something she described as peaceful. Like she was doing something meaningful. But 3 weeks later, something happened that changed everything. October 2019, Chris Watts gives an interview to an author. Chris had agreed to an interview with an author writing a book about the case. In that interview, recorded and later excerpted publicly, Chris offered yet another version of events. He introduced new details, new timelines, new psychological explanations. But here's what Anna noticed. The language he used in the interview contradicted things he'd told her in letters. Example. To Anna, June 2019 letter. I think about that morning every day. I relive it constantly. It's burned into my memory. In October 2019 interview. Honestly, a lot of that morning is a blur. I don't remember specific details clearly. Anna noticed others too. Claims about his faith journey that didn't match the timeline he'd shared with her. Descriptions of his emotional state that contradicted previous letters. And she realized something. He wasn't lying to the interviewer. He wasn't lying to her. He was lying to everyone. Because the truth didn't matter to Chris Watts. The narrative mattered. And he adjusted that narrative based on who was listening. Anna sent one final letter to Chris Watts in November 2019. She told him she couldn't continue corresponding. She thanked him for teaching her something important. That redemption without honesty isn't redemption. It's just another performance. She never received a response. If you were Anna, would you have continued believing him? Or would you have seen the red flags earlier? What would it take for you to stop? Anna's story isn't unique. According to corrections data, dozens of women have written to Chris Watts. Several have visited him. At least 3 have publicly defended his transformation. On social media, there are accounts dedicated to sharing his letters, to arguing that he deserves compassion, to claiming that he's genuinely changed. And this reveals something deeply uncomfortable about human nature. We want to believe in transformation. We want to believe people can change. But sometimes, that belief makes us vulnerable to the very people who shouldn't be trusted. Because Chris Watts hasn't just found God in prison. He's found an audience. And he's giving them exactly what they want to hear. I want to pause here because we need to talk about something important. If you're watching this and you've ever written to someone in prison, or if you've ever felt drawn to understanding someone everyone else has condemned, I'm not judging you. Empathy is not a weakness. Compassion is not naivety. But discernment matters. If this video is helping you understand the difference between genuine redemption and manipulative performance, I need you to do something. 1. Like this video right now. It helps the algorithm show this to more people who need to understand these patterns. 2. Check the description. I've linked to resources about recognizing manipulation, understanding trauma bonds, and supporting actual rehabilitation efforts that work. 3. Watch until the very end. Because what I'm about to reveal is the most disturbing part of this entire story. Chris Watts is still writing. He's still corresponding with people. And his story keeps changing. Let me show you why. Since November 2018, Christopher Watts has given 4 major versions of what happened on August 13, 2018. 4 different confessions. 4 different narratives. Let's map them out. Version 1. August 15, 2018. Location. Weld County Police Department. Chris's claim. Sean N discovered he wanted separation. She became enraged. She harmed the children. He strangled Sean N in response. He disposed of everyone to cover it up. Forensic evaluation. This version was immediately questioned by investigators because autopsy evidence contradicted timeline. Digital evidence showed premeditation. Physical evidence didn't support his sequence of events. Version 2. November 6, 2018. Location. Courtroom allocution. Statement before sentencing. Chris's claim. He alone was responsible for everything. Sean N did not harm the children. He killed all 4 victims. Brief statement. Few details. Forensic evaluation. This version was consistent with physical evidence but provided no psychological context or motive explanation. Version 3. February 18, 2019. Location. Prison interview with investigators. Chris's claim. He had been planning to leave Sean N. He was having an affair. On the night of August 12 to morning of August 13th, he felt a darkness. He described detailed premeditation. He expressed remorse and desire for understanding. Forensic evaluation. This version introduced new details about emotional state and planning that weren't in previous accounts. But forensic linguists noted something. The language shifted from factual recounting to emotional narrative.